What you're looking at right here is the brand new and much anticipated Samsung Galaxy Watch 4 Classic, which ever since Google and Samsung announced their partnership with a unified operating system, we've really been looking forward to this watch. We wanted to see what kind of software it had, what kind of battery life, what was going to be different about it, because essentially we know any older Samsung or Google Wear OS watches are essentially going to be obsolete and replaced with basically this. So in this video, we're going to dive into this watch and put it to the test. We'll see how accurate it is, we'll see what the hardware can do, and everything else you might want to know before buying this watch. But you can see a really nice aesthetic design here. Samsung released two different variations, the Galaxy Watch 4, which I actually have right back there, and the Galaxy Watch 4 Classic. Now, this one is essentially the sequel to the Galaxy Watch 3. It has the rotating bezel, has a very similar aesthetic, and otherwise is going to just be a direct sequel to that one. But looking at the front, you have that nice mechanical bezel that rotates. No other watch on the market has anything like this. Very, very satisfying to use, and it's one of the big reasons people like Galaxy watches in the first place. On the right side, we have two buttons. They double as sensors, and we'll talk about that later in the video. And what's really nice is the overall clean design of either side. The microphones, the speaker, everything like that is really hidden in this black area on the bottom. And looking in the front, you can see the display really has no black ring around it. It's very well hidden by this mechanical bezel here, and it gives you a really great screen-to-body ratio, essentially. So you have a very large 1.4-inch display. It's 450 by 450 pixels, and it's a super AMOLED display, which means that you can see it in broad daylight in really any environment. And it's going to be very crisp, very bright, very vibrant. Overall, a fantastic display. The design of this watch, I think, looks great. Something that you'll notice is that the watch straps that it comes with, however, despite being the classic variation, are actually silicone straps. I'm not sure why they didn't include leather ones, and they also kind of have a weird shape, so it prevents it from bending down too much. This is a 46mm watch, keep that in mind, so it's definitely a larger watch, and so if you have smaller wrists, it will look kind of weird. It might stick out a little too far, but you can always just replace the watch straps with something a lot smaller. Now, there is actually a smaller variation as well, the 42mm option, but 46mm. I have a fairly average sized wrist, I think, so you guys can see how this fits on me. I think for most people, it's probably not going to be a problem. Looking at the back, you'll see our array of fitness sensors. We'll talk more about that later in the video, and this does charge by Qi wireless charging, so it will charge on the back of your phone or on a nice little charging pad that comes in the box. Now, as far as the battery goes, of course, it really depends on what you're using with this watch. For my use, I was getting almost 2 days, but if you're really pushing it, I'm sure you can at least get through a full day. So it's definitely not like a 7-day battery, but at the very least, it's not going to die in the middle of the day on you. Overall, the physical design is really solid. It has pretty nice haptics, it has an always-on display, it's 5 atmospheres and IP68 water resistant, so it's really good for both being classy and for working out. Now, with that being said, let's actually get into a test of the speakers and the microphone. What's the weather in San Diego?
In San Diego, California, it is cloudy and 68 degrees right now.
Set a reminder for 5 p.m. later today.
What should I remind you of?
Wash my socks.
Reminder saved.
Why do we pay taxes?
I didn't understand that.
All right, this is a microphone test. So first you can see what it sounds like with a normal phone. And now this is the microphone on the Galaxy Watch 4 Classic. So if I was on a phone call, this is kind of what it would sound like.
Now, as far as the internals go on this device, this is basically like a smartphone on your wrist. You have Wi-Fi, you have Bluetooth 5.2 to connect to your phone or to earbuds if you want to run without your phone. You have GPS on here, you have NFC for Samsung Pay, you have all types of things like that, 1.5 gigabytes of RAM and 16 gigabytes of storage, so you can save some music offline. This does also allow offline Spotify, which is great, and speaking of the interface, that's obviously a highlight of this device. This is the first time in a while Samsung's moving away from Tizen OS to Google's Wear OS platform. So let's take an interface tour and see what's actually different. Okay, so taking a look at the interface, tapping and holding allows you to change your watch faces, and there are quite a few different ones to choose from. Some of them are familiar from previous Samsung watches, and other ones are completely new. So let's just say we want like maybe this one right here. You tap on that. You can also customize them as well. Now, if we swipe down from the top, you have our quick settings, and they have all the stuff we like to see, like bedtime mode, underwater mode, theater mode, and things like that. You can also find your phone, of course. If you swipe up from the bottom, This goes into your app drawer, so a little bit different than we saw before, and you can use the bezel to navigate up and down in here as well. Pressing the top right button is our home button. It'll bring us back to here every single time. And if we swipe over from the left side, or actually if you use the rotating bezel as well, it'll go through all of your notifications. We can reply to notifications by tapping on them. And of course, there you see we can send emojis, we can do handwriting, send voice memos, or we can even do like speech to text. Of course, a lot of options right there, as well as quick replies. And if we go over to the right, using the rotating bezel, we have all of our different tiles. And there are a lot of Google ones, as you can see, but you also have some Samsung ones as well. So really nice combination here that shows you a lot of stuff in a really nice, beautiful screen. And if you tap on any one of them, it'll go into that app essentially to show you a little bit more about it. So you can go down and see more about your heart rate in the past, what your average is, and things like that. Now, as far as how the buttons work, if you press the top one once, like I said, it's your home button. If you double press it, you can customize that. I have it opening up Samsung Health. If we press and hold it, it opens Bixby. Now the bottom button, if we press it once, it'll go into our open apps. That's what I have it set to do right now. Or if we press and hold it, it'll open up Samsung Pay. So if you go into settings, the layout is very similar to what you see on your phone. You can go down here and customize whatever you want, from notifications or connections to pair Bluetooth earbuds, or you can go down to advanced features and either set up an SOS or customize the buttons on the right side. Now keep in mind, if you have an old Galaxy Watch, you won't be able to transfer the apps or watch faces to this new device. But I found that I didn't have any shortage of watch faces, and a lot of the old ones were still present on this device. You also now have access to a lot of Google apps like Fit, Pay, Google Keep, Google Maps, YouTube, and Google Messages, as well as, of course, the alternative being Samsung Messages. Currently, it is using Bixby and Samsung Pay. Bixby, well, as you can see right here, is doing a decent job. It's definitely come a long way, but they do promise to eventually come out with Google's voice assistant on here, but it's just not here yet. So don't buy this watch for that. Just understand that it might come someday. There's also some other benefits with Wear OS on here, and one of them is that you're able to more easily install apps on your watch from your phone. You also have things like gestures on here, so you can shake twice to answer a call or twist twice to reject a call. That's not something that I ever do. I just swipe it with my hand normally. So the hardware in this watch looks great. It works very well as an extension of your phone, but there's also another thing this watch does. As most watches, it's really pushing to be more of a health device. And so looking at what this watch actually does for your health, every year they're coming out with new features. And of course, this still does the basics as a pedometer, a heart rate sensor, GPS, all those things, but it also does more than that. So looking through all of these, like I said, you do have some sleep tracking, which I found was reasonably accurate. The heart rate tracking, as you can see right here, I went on a run, and for the most part, if you're doing a steady state run, it's going to follow close enough to what your actual heart rate is. I was comparing this to the Polar H10, a known accurate heart rate strap. But once you start doing things like sprint intervals and your heart rate changes much more quickly, it does struggle to keep up with that. Now, looking at the GPS, I found that this was kind of weird. I usually look at the map to understand if the GPS is accurate or not, and when you look at this, you'll see that the start point is sometimes as much as a half mile away from where you actually started. Now, that doesn't mean it didn't track the first half mile, because I know, as you can see right here, the 1 mile mark was very shortly after what it said I started at. So I know that it was tracking distance accurately, but for some reason, there's a bug in the map, and it just wasn't showing that correctly. Once you start looking at the rest of the run, however, you will see there is some substantial drunk wandering, so it definitely wasn't the best at showing where I was on the trail, and this was a relatively open space as well. I wasn't like in a canyon or anything like that, so the GPS on here is passable, but I wouldn't use it if you're trying to do any more advanced training for something like a marathon or a triathlon. In the Samsung Health app, you also get some really cool advanced running metrics like asymmetry, contact time, flight time, regularity, and other things that, I mean, unless you're really digging into it, they probably don't matter for most people, but at the very least, they could be an indicator of if you have maybe some type of problem that's going to cause an injury later on down the road, maybe if your shoes are worn out and you don't realize it. Like, there's a lot of things that could be indicated by asymmetric running, for example. We also have blood oxygen levels on here and stress levels. They kind of changed the way that they track your everyday, like, you know how Apple does their little rings? Here they do rings, but they call them like their heart rings. And I think it's really nice. They have your steps, your calories, and your active minutes to really indicate when you're healthy every day. You want to close all your rings, and I think that's a nice way to kind of gamify it. You also have blood pressure and ECG on here, as we did in the past. And then we get into some of the new features. The first one is the snoring detection. It pairs with your phone and lets you know if you're snoring. It'll even record it so you can hear your snoring or maybe talking in your sleep, just in case you live alone and want to know how much your neighbors hate you. But other than that, the really big one is the body composition measurement. And they claim that this is 98% accurate, or at least consistent with DXA measurements. and I found that it is definitely not accurate. So the way this works is you touch the two buttons with your middle two fingers, you want to keep your arms away from your body, and after maybe 10 seconds or 15 seconds, it'll tell you what it estimates your body composition to be, from skeletal muscle to fat and water and all types of things like that. And this is definitely not accurate. I've made sure to measure this many times when I'm hydrated, dehydrated, different times of the day, and I found that the variation is absolutely incredible. It says that my body fat ranges anywhere from 13% body fat, which is probably relatively accurate, all the way up to over 18% body fat. So that's like a difference of 10 pounds of fat that I'm adding and losing throughout the day, which absolutely is not true. On top of that, it is a little bit weird with how it actually reports your metrics. So for example, if you look at this, it has my skeletal muscle in the red zone, which I don't know if it thinks I'm too muscular. I'm most definitely not. So Samsung, I don't know what's up with that. I think that they need to look a little bit more into the body composition measurements. You can use it as a baseline and follow some general trends, but I would by no means look at this and use it as any type of actual measurement to figure out what your muscle or fat composition really is. Okay, so overall, the Galaxy Watch 4 Classic is a fantastic device. I love the rotating bezel, the very large display, the overall mechanical and kind of analog look of this watch, now combined with Google's Wear OS, which means that you're going to have not only Google app support, but in the future, it's going to be easier for developers to choose what they want to make. So if you think about it, if a developer was making an app for an Apple user, they would just make an Apple Watch app. Now, if they're making one for an Android user, they then have to choose between Garmin and Fitbit and Wear OS and Tizen OS, and you're going to have it really spread across all of those. So now, with a more unified platform, we should be getting more apps and better apps in the future to really compete with Apple Watches. So I'm very excited about that. But not everything is good about this watch. Getting into some of the cons, the first one is that when you're putting music on here, it has to be an MP3 file. It can't handle WAV files. So just a really subtle drawback there, because most of my files are WAV on my phone. On top of that, I don't know why it came with the silicone strap. Being a Watch 4 Classic, you would think you'd want to look kind of classy and have a leather strap. I bought the leather hybrid strap, as you can see right here, which looks a little bit better, but I still think I might find a different one, maybe somewhere on Amazon. The third thing is the body composition, as I mentioned before, is definitely not accurate. Hopefully it improves with time, but at least for now, I would take that with a huge grain of salt. Other than that, the watch is definitely very quick, but I did run into one issue, and I want to show you guys that right here. When I restarted my watch, I just randomly rebooted it one day, and it got really laggy for about the first 5 to 10 minutes. You can see right here, moving around, things were just not moving quickly at all. I set it down, I came back maybe 5 minutes later, and everything was running very normal again. As far as the speed goes now, I find that it is honestly a little bit snappier than the Galaxy Watch 3. It feels very smooth, and everything seems to run very well. So that's been it. That's my take on the Galaxy Watch 4 Classic. I'm excited to see where it goes. I think there's a little bit of growing pains going on here as Google and Samsung are kind of learning how to work together. But other than that, I think there's a lot of potential in this watch. I love the physical design, and I'm excited to see where this watch ends up in a couple months once we have even more apps on here. So if you enjoy this video, consider liking and subscribing. I will be making more videos about the Galaxy Watch 4 Classic compared to the Watch 3 and the Watch 4 and whatever other device you guys want to see. Leave a comment below for what you think about this, as well as what you want me to compare it to. As always, guys, if you enjoy this video, consider liking and subscribing. I'm Mike O'Brien. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.